Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the Deep Dive. It is honestly great to have you with us today for what I think is going to be a pretty crucial conversation.
Hello, everyone. It is a pleasure to be here. And you're right. Crucial is absolutely the word. We have a lot of ground to cover.
We really do. I was sitting with my coffee this morning, just looking at the market data from the last 3 years, 2023, 2024, 2025.
An incredible run.
The numbers are just staggering. I mean, we saw total returns in the S&P 500 hitting nearly 26%, then 25%, and then another 18% last year. If you started investing 3 years ago, you've basically been trained to believe stocks only go up.
The universe has taught you a very specific lesson.
A very profitable one. It's been a money printer.
It has. Honestly, one of the strongest bull market stretches we've seen in a long time. But that context is exactly why today's deep dive is so important.
Okay.
Because when you look at the landscape for 2026, the vibe is it's shifting. It doesn't necessarily scream crash, but it definitely doesn't look like another guaranteed party either. The easy mode is likely over.
It feels heavier, doesn't it? And in the analysis we're unpacking today, there's a specific label for 2026 that I think just sets the stage perfectly. They're calling it the year of the shakeout, which I have to say sounds a little ominous.
It sounds dramatic, but it's actually a very practical definition. Think of it this way. A shakeout year is where the market separates the emotional investors from the disciplined ones.
The ones chasing headlines.
Exactly, the hype chasers. It's a year where the rising tide stops lifting all boats. You can still win big, but you have to be precise. If you're just throwing darts at a board like in 2024, you're probably going to get hurt.
So our job today is to provide the roadmap for being that disciplined winner. We've organized this into 3 distinct chapters. First, the macro reality, the 3 big risks staring us in the face.
Right.
Second, the opportunities, because money is always moving somewhere. And finally, and I'm really excited for this part, we're going to do a granular autopsy of a model portfolio strategy for 2026.
And we really mean granular. We're talking exact percentages for retirement accounts, taxable brokerages, crypto, even how to handle your cash. We are moving from theory to, actual practice.
Okay, let's get right into it then. The macro outlook. It's January 2026. What is setting the tone right now? Because I feel like I keep hearing about inflation again.
It really boils down to 2 things. The inflation hangover and the Federal Reserve. Right now, all eyes are on the data, specifically the CPI and PPI reports.
Just to clarify for everyone, that's the Consumer Price Index and Producer Price Index.
The inflation report cards, basically.
Right.
That's it. And you throw in the labor market data, too. See, for the last year, the market has been assuming the battle is won. But these reports, they aren't just boring government numbers. They are the signals. They tell us if the Fed is actually going to cut rates, or if they have to keep them painful to stomp out that last bit of inflation.
And that uncertainty.
That leads us directly to risk number 1, valuations, or as I like to call it, the price for perfection problem.
Okay, so we've seen this massive boom in AI and tech. Are we saying they're overpriced? Because, companies like NVIDIA and Microsoft are actually making insane money. It's not like the dot-com bubble where there was no revenue.
You're absolutely right. The companies aren't bad. They're fantastic. Look at the mega cap tech giants. They are cash printing machines. The problem isn't the company, it's the expectations baked into the stock price. When a company is priced for perfection, it means the market assumes nothing will ever go wrong. It assumes like 20% growth forever.
So even good news isn't good enough at that point.
Precisely. If investors expect a miracle and the company just delivers a great result, the stock drops. We saw this start to happen late last year.
Okay, so if your portfolio is, say, 100% heavy growth, like the NASDAQ Q100 or one of those niche AI ETFs, 2026 could be incredibly frustrating.
That's it. The underlying companies might gray their earnings, but the stock price could go nowhere because it just got too far ahead of itself. It has to wait for the earnings to catch up to the price.
That is a dangerous spot to be in. Being right about the company, but wrong about the stock, which I think dovetails perfectly into risk number 2, interest rates. I feel like the consensus view on the street is rates will fall, capital becomes cheap, and stocks will fly.
And that is the most dangerous assumption you can make right now. The market has priced in fast, aggressive rate cuts. But what if inflation is sticky?
Right.
What if wage growth keeps prices elevated? Or what if commodities spike again for some reason?
Then the Fed can't cut.
Exactly. And if rates stay higher for longer, that changes the math for everything. It hurts real estate. It hurts companies with a lot of floating rate debt. And it definitely hurts those long-duration growth stocks we just talked about.
So the market doesn't even need a rate hike to panic.
No. It just needs rates to not drop as fast as all the optimists are hoping. It's purely an expectations game.
Okay, so we have expensive stocks and potentially stubborn rates.
Yeah.
What's the third piece of this puzzle?
Geopolitics, but specifically viewed through the lens of emotion. I mean, we have trade tensions, supply chain issues, conflicts in various regions.
Sure.
But the financial risk isn't just the event itself, the risk is the reaction. In a shakeout year, emotional investors are just looking for a reason to sell.
It's the trigger finger. Everyone's already nervous, so the moment a headline breaks, they just dump everything.
And that volatility is the trap. If you panic, sell at the bottom of a geopolitical scare, you lock in losses that you might never recover when the market bounces back a week later. The risk isn't the war. The risk is your behavior during the news cycle about the war.
Okay, that's the scary stuff. Let's flip the coin. Even in a shakeout year, capital flows somewhere. So where are the opportunities in 2026?
Well, let's look at AI again, but through a different lens. Opportunity number one is what we can call AI execution.
The show me phase.
The show me the money phase. Exactly. 2023 through 2025, that was the hype. We are buying thousands of GPUs. We're integrating chatbots. Great. Now, in 2026, companies have to show the return on investment.
Right. We need to see revenue going up or expenses going down specifically because of these tools.
So how do you play that as an investor? I mean, do you try to pick the one software company that's going to monetize it the best? Because that feels like finding a needle in a haystack.
It's gambling, really. The smarter play is broad tech ETFs. Think VGT Vanguard Information Technology or QQQM for the NASDAQ 100, or even broader growth funds like SCHG or VUG.
So you're capturing the whole trend.
Yes. You want to capture the productivity boost across the entire sector without betting your life savings on whether one specific company can figure out their monetization model.
Makes a lot of sense. You own the trend, not the specific winner or loser.
Okay, what about opportunity number two?
Clarity via rate cuts. Now, I know I just said relying on fast cuts is a risk, but if the Fed does start cutting, even if it's slow, it provides certainty. And when you have certainty, money flows into the areas that have been, choked off by high costs.
We're talking about the unloved sectors.
Yes. Small cap stocks, cyclical sectors, and potentially real estate. These areas have just been hammered by high borrowing costs. As soon as that pressure eases, they have the most room to spring back. They are like a coiled spring right now.
And finally, opportunity number three. I have a feeling this is going to be my favorite because it involves being intentionally uncool.
Oh, it is. It's the return of boring.
The return of boring. I love it.
When growth is uncertain, boring wins. We are talking about dividend growth. But I have to make a huge distinction here because people get this wrong all the time. I do not mean high yield.
Right. Don't just buy this stock paying 15% dividends, because usually that means the share price is tanking and the company's in trouble.
That's a yield trap. Exactly. We want dividend kings. Companies that have raised their dividends for 50 plus years. They've weathered inflation, recessions, wars, you name it.
So how do you access that?
A great way is an ETF like SCHD. That's the Schwab US Dividend Equity ETF. It acts as an anchor. When the tech sector is having a complete panic attack, these companies just keep printing cash and paying you.
Okay, so we have the theory. Risks are high valuations and sticky rates. Opportunities are in execution, rate clarity, and quality dividends. Now, let's get practical. Let's walk through this model portfolio autopsy. This is designed specifically for this 2026 environment.
It is. It applies a three-fund thesis balancing foundational value and growth across all the different account types. It's highly diversified, which is your armor in a shakeout year.
Let's start with the retirement buckets, the safe core. Most people listening probably have an employer plan, like a 401k or a 403b. What's the move there?
Usually those employer plans are frustrating, limited options, high fees. So the strategy here is radical simplicity. In the employer account, this portfolio is 100% S&P 500.
Wow, 100%. No bonds, no international. That seems aggressive for a safe bucket.
In the employer plan, it's about efficiency. If you can't beat the market with the terrible choices your employer gives you, just be the market. However, if you have a solo 401k or a self-directed account where you have control,
Then you can get fancy.
then the model shifts significantly. It goes to a 3-3-3-3-3-3 split.
A triad.
Right. 33% value via SCHD, 33% S&P 500 via VOO, and 33% growth via SCHG. It balances the boat. If tech crashes, value holds you up. If the market rips, growth pulls you forward. It just smooths out the ride without killing your return.
I like that balance.
Yeah,
Now let's talk about the Roth IRA. This is the tax-free bucket, which makes it, precious real estate in any portfolio.
absolutely. The Roth is where you want your highest potential growth because you never, ever pay taxes on the gains. So the model uses a 50-50 split here, value and growth.
Okay.
The value side is all SCHD again, boring, reliable. But the growth side, and that's where it gets a little spicy.
How spicy are we talking?
Well, inside that growth portion, it holds broad tech like QQQM. But then it allocates 5% to a momentum ETF. The ticker is SPMO, and crucially, 5% to a Bitcoin ETF.
Bitcoin. Inside the Roth. I feel like traditional financial advisors would have a heart attack hearing that.
They might, but it's a calculated tax play. The Bitcoin is a moonshot asset, right? If it goes to the moon, say it does a 5x or 10x over the next decade, you want those massive gains to be tax-free.
If you held it in a normal brokerage, the tax bill would be enormous.
Exactly. And if it crashes,
It's only 5% of half the portfolio.
right, it won't destroy your retirement. It's what they call an asymmetric bet. Great upside, cap downside.
Smart. Okay, moving on to the taxable brokerage. For many high earners, once the retirement accounts are maxed out, this is where the bulk of the cash flow ends up. This is the fun engine.
Correct. And looking at this model, the structure is really fascinating. It's roughly 73% ETFs and 27% individual stocks. That 27% is the highest it's been for this strategy, which suggests some confidence in picking winners, but it's all strictly tiered by risk.
Okay, let's walk through the tiers. At the bottom, we have the risky speculative tier.
These are tiny positions, 1, maybe 2% max. We're seeing names like RCAT, INLD, Applied Digital. The key here is the rule attached to them, no dollar cost averaging.
Wait, explain that. Usually the advice is buy the dip.
Not with speculative stocks. These are binary bets. If the stock drops 50%, you do not buy more to lower your average. You just let it ride. If it dies, it dies. You don't throw good money after bad. You only DCA into your winners.
That is a discipline most people lack. Okay, then we have medium conviction.
Companies like Apple and Palantir sitting at about 1.5% each. Great companies, but maybe the valuation is a little rich, so we aren't backing up the truck just yet.
And finally, the high conviction tier. These are the stocks this portfolio is buying every single month, regardless of the price.
This is where the strategy really shows its hand.
Yeah.
We have Google at 3%, SoFi at 3%, Microsoft at 5%. But the biggest single stock holding is Berkshire Hathaway at 7%.
Berkshire in a growth portfolio. That seems old school. I mean, Warren Buffett isn't exactly a tech bro.
It's brilliant, actually. Berkshire is the stabilizer. It's a conglomerate that basically acts like a value ETF. When tech is going crazy, Berkshire often holds steady or even rises. It balances out that Microsoft and Google exposure. It's the ballast in the ship.
It keeps you steady when the waves get high. I like it. And to wrap up the brokerage, the ETF anchor is still there too, right?
Oh, absolutely. To offset those risky individual stocks, the ETF side is heavy on value. It has 19% in SCHD and 10% in VTV, that's Vanguard value, plus 22% in the S&P 500. So even though you're having some fun picking stocks, the heavy lifting is still being done by boring, diversified funds.
That's a recurring theme today. Boring is the backbone. Now, we have to talk about the asset class everyone has an opinion on. Crypto.
In this model, crypto makes up about 10% of the total net worth. That is significant. It's not just play money anymore.
But looking at the breakdown, it's not just a grab bag of random meme coins.
Oh, no, not at all. It's highly concentrated. 81% of the crypto bucket is Bitcoin. 11% is Ethereum. There is a little bit of dust, about 4% each in XRP and Cardano. But the strategy explicitly states it is only actively buying Bitcoin.
Why just Bitcoin? Why not chase the next 100x altcoin?
Because in a shakeout year, the most speculative assets get crushed first. Bitcoin is viewed here as having long-term institutional staying power. Big things coming, as they say. Whereas everything else is treated as high-risk gambling. It's a conviction play on the asset class, not the casino.
Got it. Now let's shift gears to the physical world. Real estate and cash.
Yeah.
This part of the deep dive really caught my eye because of the distinction it made between a home and an asset.
Yes, this is a classic financial debate, and this model takes a very hard stance. The primary residence is labeled a liability.
Ouch. I can hear homeowners yelling at their speakers right now. But it's my biggest investment, my nest egg.
I know it's emotional, but just look at the math. A primary home takes money out of your pocket every month. Mortgage, insurance, repairs, taxes.
They cost center.
Right. Unless you're renting out rooms, it doesn't generate cash flow. It's a consumption item that hopefully appreciates. A rental property, on the other hand, puts money in your pocket. That's an asset.
So what's the play for 2026? Are they buying houses?
No. The goal here is to acquire a commercial building, and to do that, you need liquidity. Which brings us to the cash strategy. Currently, this portfolio is holding 11% in cash equivalents. That is much higher than usual.
That's a lot of dry powder sitting on the sidelines. I mean, isn't inflation just eating that away?
It serves two purposes. One, saving for that commercial real estate down payment. And two, if the market does dip in early or mid 2026, remember those risks we talked about, this cash allows the investor to buy that dip aggressively.
And where is this cash sitting? Please tell me it's not in a checking account earning 0.01%.
No, it's split. Emergency funds, travel funds, that's in a high-yield savings account like Capital One, earning roughly 4%.
Okay, standard stuff.
But the dry powder for investing, that's in SGOV.
SGOV, short-term treasuries. Okay, why specifically there?
This is a massive hack, specifically for high earners or people in high-tax states like California or New York. SGOV pays a yield similar to a savings account, around 4.5% to 5%, but because it is strictly U.S. Treasuries, that interest is exempt from state and local taxes.
Oh, that is huge. If you're in a high tax bracket in California, you're paying, what, 10% or 13% take tax on that income?
Exactly. So earning 5% in bank account is really like earning 4% after tax. With SGOV, you keep the whole 5%. It's free efficiency. It keeps your cash liquid, safe, and tax optimized while you wait.
That is the kind of detail I love. So we've covered the macro risks, the pockets of opportunity, and the specific allocation across all these accounts. If we step back and look at this 2026 plan as a whole, what's the synthesis? What's the bumper sticker?
The synthesis is aggressive patience.
Aggressive patience. I like that. Expand on it.
You're being boring with your core. Those ETFs like SCHD and VOO are doing the heavy lifting, protecting you. You're being selective with growth-only high-conviction stocks like Microsoft and Berkshire. And you're being aggressive with your cash hoarding it in SGOV so you can strike when the shakeout happens.
So it's not about chasing the shiny object. It's about building a fortress that can handle the volatility.
That's it. And I think the biggest winner in 2026 won't be the person who finds the next NVIDIA or times the exact bottom of a crash. It will be the person who successfully ignores the headlines, rebalances their portfolio early, and realizes that boring investing is usually the fastest path to freedom.
Aggressive patience. That is something to meditate on for the week. Thank you so much for walking us through this roadmap.
It was great to break this down. Stay disciplined out there, everyone. Goodbye.
Goodbye, everyone. See you next time.